Kia ora all and welcome to the Huddy Hui on Huddy Sports. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have a very special guest. He has played 69 tests for the All Blacks, scoring 11 tries, made his debut against Scotland in 2012 at Murrayfield. And he's also the Hurricanes co-captain, of course, lifted that Super Rugby trophy in 2016 with one hand. Welcome, Dane, to the Huddy Hui. It's fantastic to have you on. Your role as a hooker, you sort of, in the All Black jersey, changed how a hooker plays the game of rugby. What part did you play in the evolution of that position? And when did that evolution start to happen?
Oh, first of all, cheers, lads, for having me. Big fan of the show. I was quite lucky, to be fair. I think when I kind of made the All Blacks in 2012, the game plan they kind of went with kind of suited the way I kind of played the game. I've never really restricted myself as being a front rower, and yeah, it was just kind of the way I played the game, and I've always tried to have a go with the ball in hand, and yeah, I think timing was probably the crucial thing in that, being in that team, and I just kind of expressed the way I played the game and have a go, and sometimes it came off and sometimes it didn't. So yeah, I think I was pretty lucky.
Who was your role model growing up playing hooker? And you've had 6 hookers in your tenure in the All Blacks: Andrew Hawke, Kevin Mialamu, Cody Taylor, Liam Coltman, Asafo Moore, Nathan Harris. You've outlasted all those guys. Who's been the hardest to keep out of the team, and who do you like the most? Who do you dislike the most? And who did you look up to when you first began?
That's a good question. I think everyone's kind of played their part. I was like I said, timing before. I loved when I first made the Canes. I had Andrew Hall, who was a great mentor for me. Someone who I was before when I was at college. I kind of looked up to, so I got to learn off him. And then obviously making the All Blacks, I had Kevy as well. So guys like that, I was pretty lucky in that department. I had 2 of the best hookers in the world that I got to learn off and stuff like that. So yeah, but you're always learning, mate. Like I have a great relationship with Cody Taylor. We both come from small provinces, so yeah, I learned a lot of him. And I think with like guys like Asafo, it's probably and Ricky, guys like that. It's I have to learn what I've learned and hand it on to them. I'm not one of those. The old school mentality is probably gone, and you don't really tell the young fella anything. But yeah, that's the evolving role of a hooker and helping those guys out so they can become the best hookers they can be as well.
It's interesting you mentioned old school mentality. When did that start to change in the Hurricanes and the All Blacks? Because it must be very intimidating for a young guy to come in as a hot prospect and get the cold shoulder from someone they've idolised.
Yeah, and that was the part when I first made the Hurricanes in 2008. That's just the way it was, and they didn't give you the cold shoulder. It was all about earning, your teammates' respect. And that was sweet. I just put my head down and that's what I wanted to do. Earn my in Hori's respect, and hopefully I did that. And I think as those kind of older guys kind of retired and stuff like that, probably after 15, in 16, you kind of seen. I think when Rito kind of took over the All Blacks, that's when things kind of transition, and you definitely noticed in the Super Rugby because you had a lot of young guys coming through and I think there's still a place for that old school mentality, but you've got to, I think, meet them in the middle as well and get around them and help them out as well.
Because when you were in the Hurricanes in your early days, Mark Hammett, former All Black hooker, was a coach. And as a Wellington guy, sometimes Mark Hammett really made me quite angry. How much of a contribution did he make changing the Hurricanes culture, or was that player driven? Because after Hammett left, you had such great success.
Yeah, it was a messy, I'm not gonna lie, it was a pretty messy situation with, those guys that kind of moved on. They had a great relationship with Colin Cooper. Things worked really well with, it was really player driven, and Hammett kind of had his own way of doing things and didn't see, those guys for the future, or they just didn't get along, was probably the best way of putting it. So he kind of envisioned the Hurricanes to go somewhere in a different direction, and unfortunately those guys had to leave, which was it was pretty devastating because some of those guys that left in Nonu, Hori, I think Jose Gear, Pity Wepu, they're definitely Hurricanes Legion. So, yeah, but that's where kind of Hammer kind of seen that, I suppose, the vision and direction the Hurricanes was going. And I think, and looking back, it was a pretty good decision. Like, it ended up being really good for the Hurricanes. We had the young leaders had to grow up really quick and work out and get the team going.
So 2016, Dane, was a very special year for the Hurricanes, of course, winning their first ever Super Rugby title. One of the unique things about the Hurricanes final series campaign, it even started before the finals campaign, was the game against the Crusaders in Christchurch. The last try to be scored against the Hurricanes for the rest of the season was in that first half against the Crusaders. And of course, I was at that game with my uncles from Canterbury. I certainly gave it to them that day. But tell us about that final series, but also about the defence that you guys put into place for the finals campaign, and who was instrumental behind your defensive patterns.
Yeah, obviously that game down in Christchurch is definitely one I remember. I think we needed 5 bonus 5 points to finish top of the table. We ended up doing that and rely on other results, and they all end up coming through. So we definitely had the rugby gods on our side. Plumtree was obviously he was a defence coach, but there was I think during the season, midway through the season, I think it was Corey Jane, TJ Petanara, and a couple of the boys in the defensive group came up with a system. And then they that was the and it was all about line speed. That's honestly all it was, getting up and putting pressure on the attack, just, to make decisions. And by the time the finals kind of came around, we brought into it, and we'd been working on it all season. It was something that we kind of implemented, and it was new. Like, no other team was really doing it. So that was and by the quarterfinals, we were just humming. Like, we knew what it was about, we knew what our job was, and we had a really good system in place. So it was a massive part of us winning that final and taking out, winning the super final for the first time. So it was kind of Plumtree, and Corey and TJ had a massive input in implementing that system.
You hear professional rugby players a lot nowadays reference systems. How different are the systems in the Hurricanes as opposed to the All Blacks? Do you have to learn completely different defensive patterns and line-out calls, and how do you handle that?
Yeah, the system's probably a lot different. I suppose the line-outs, every team that you're in is a different system, so you just got to put the work in, I suppose. It's and learn. Defense is probably a bit easier. Like, every team's probably got the same kind of system now. Like, some things will differ a little bit, but it's more the language that we use. They're always different. So just got to do your homework and make sure you're right and stuff like that. So some guys actually call out their super calls during like a AV's training because they're so embedded in their head and stuff like that. So a lot of the systems are very similar, but it's all about the lingo and stuff like that.
How much of it is intuitive?
I think there's a big onus on yourself to actually, you can have all the systems in place, but it's about reacting and stuff, seeing what's in front of you and making a decision on the go, because sometimes you've only got a split second to make it as well. So there's a big, ownership on that to make the right stuff. But you got a system, but you just got to make sure you do it and see what you need to do.
You've spent most of your All Black life throwing the ball to either Brodie Retallick or Sam Whitelock. What makes them so exceptional, and how is it different, apart from their superior ability, playing with them as opposed to playing with the guys in the Hurricanes and the Lions?
To be fair, it's pretty special, mate. 2 world-class locks. It's one of those guys when you're in the change room, you kind of look around and you just love seeing like Sammy's face or Brodie's face, because they got your back. And like with our line-out, especially in the All Blacks, like Kieran Reid had a massive part. He was exceptional, pretty special, very smart in the way he designed line-outs. And so it makes it nice when you're thrown to tall timber like Brodie Retallick and Sammy Whitelock.
And what about the difference between Reid and McCaw? How did they contrast in terms of leadership?
Probably very different. I love playing under them both. Very just good team players. Like I said, McCaw was probably more in their old school mentality. But yeah, the things he used to do on the field, you're just one of those guys you didn't want to let down, and then followed. And Rito, yeah, kind of very, very similar to the way he played, but you got around a lot more of the team, the players. And I suppose that was the new generation thing. We had to change and the way we led players, and he was awesome doing that.
What will Sam Cane provide? Because some might argue, and you're well qualified to comment on this, that Ardie Sevilla is the best 7 in New Zealand. And were you disappointed perhaps that you weren't considered for the captaincy given your experience?
No. I'd happily give that away to Sam Cane. I've played a lot of rugby with Sam, and he's a great man, and he thoroughly deserves to be the All Black captain. Just the way he plays, mate. He's very physical. Has a great presence about him, well respected amongst the team, and I think that's definitely key. Being an All Black captain is being respected, and he's definitely one guy that I reckon if I be in the All Blacks again, I don't want to let down, just because he's got that mana about him. So I think it's a big thing about being an All Black captain, is being respected. And mate, he wouldn't do anything I wouldn't do. So that's he's got my tick of approval.
On the subject of mana, you have a Maori background. You won the Tom French Cup in that year that Brad referenced before. Tell us about your Maori heritage and what that means in your life.
Yeah, so my mother, her mum was born in Gisborne from Ngāti Porou. So I was brought up, a little, wasn't too much, I suppose, embedded in it, but we definitely went up to Gisborne and visited my Māori family and stuff like that. So very proud, especially playing for the Māori All Blacks in 2010. 100 years of Māori rugby. That was a very special moment, and been given the chance to do that and represent my iwi and stuff like that. Yeah, and got the winning the Tom French Memorial Trophy was a very proud day for me as well.
So Dane, the last 4 years of your professional rugby career have been quite frustrating for you, mainly to do with injuries, not only having a niggly ankle, but also concussions. Tell us the effects that had on you and the frustrations of you trying to get back out of the rugby paddock.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not going to lie, it was very frustrating times, especially the concussion stuff, because it was, no one's got the answers. At least with a knee, or when I did my ACL, I can say, 10 months, you'll be back playing. So, you got an end goal. So the concussion stuff was, just not knowing what was gonna happen if I was gonna play rugby again. I had those conversations with my wife and stuff like that. So, I think what drove me was just getting back to teams that I love playing for, and that was the All Blacks and the Hurricanes, and the love of the game. And that was kind of my driving force of just I want to end on my terms. I don't want to retire or because I've had an injury or something like that. I want to say that's enough. So that was something that kind of kept me driven, and I still love playing for the Hurricanes and playing footy. So that's a massive factor of me just working through those injuries and doing what I can to get back on the field.
What was the worst of the concussion? Because concussion is so scary. The NFL has been sued over concussion, and the head has become sacrosanct in the game now. Yeah. What was the worst part of your recovery from concussion?
It's probably the headaches, especially early on. Like I'd get on the bike. There's a very strict protocol that we have to use now, which is fair enough, that New Zealand rugby's kind of put out. So the bikes, I'll do 30-minute bikes, and I'll be at home for 8 hours, just knackered. And 30 minutes for a rugby player on a bike's pretty piss poor. So that was really frustrating thing. Just kind of I couldn't even do weights and stuff like that for a couple of weeks or a couple of months actually. So that was probably the hardest part, just not being able to train and do what I can to be a rugby player.
Which opponent internationally gets most under your skin?
There's a few of them. I'll probably Stephen Moore for the Aussie. We used to have some good battles.
And what is it about Stephen that antagonises you, apart from his ability and the fact that he's Australian?
Yeah. Do I say anymore? No. We had great respect for each other. Just on the field, he used to give me a bit of. I was a little bit younger than him, so he used to get stuck into me verbally and stuff like that, which I probably loved anyway. But he was yeah, he used to chip away. He used to get me a couple of cheap shots in the ruck and stuff like that. So yeah, he used to fire me up. But yeah, good man off the field. But one guy used to get under my skin during the game.
I remember a test against England where Dylan Hartley was getting stuck into you. What about Dylan Hartley? He's a menace.
Yeah. I think I've only played him twice. Like I played Stephen a lot more. So yeah, in that game, I think he elbowed me in the head. He held me down and pushed my head into the ground, and then he got the better of me that day. Unfortunately, he was holding me down. I ended up giving him a boot. So yeah, he's definitely a pest.
And what did you do when Malcolm Marks from South Africa turned up? He's built like a forklift, that guy.
Yeah, he's a big lad, mate. He's a very big lad. But yeah, he was awesome to go against. Yeah, great world class hooker. So that's the kind of guys you love going against, those kind of lads.
So last year, Dane, you and the last round of the Swindale Shield against Poneke, you played a half of rugby for your rugby club Poneke. Tell us about the influence of Poneke on your rugby career, and who are some of the main influences at the club that have helped you a lot in your rugby journey?
Yeah, mate, I'm very lucky. I don't think I'd be where I am today if it wasn't for Poneke. So I first went over at 2007. Yeah, 2007. So Richard Watt, who's a Poneke legend, was probably him and John Jackson were kind of the coaches. So yeah, they've had those guys have been massive for my career and massive at my club level as well. So yeah, and I've had to spend a lot of time with Richard Watt, obviously with Wellington Lions and the Hurricanes as well. So yeah, those guys have been huge for my club career and moving forward. And I'm very thankful for my club. I always try to get back when I can, and it's a massive part of why I play rugby is for my club as well. So yeah, great club, mate. So I definitely owe a lot to them for getting where I am today. Tell
us about your arrival at Poneke and how that happened, because as a contemporary of your age group, Dane, I was at St. Pat Silverstream and seem to recall a very talented year 14 at Wellington College.
There was
year 13. Never went back second year 7. Yeah. Mate, I went to Paraparaumu College from like third form to sixth form, and then moved in town for 1 year. But I loved it, mate. It was awesome. It was a great club, great college show. Just like when we were at Pram, we'd play like third 15, our third division. So we were never really like a big rugby school. But yeah, I think my first traditional playing against Ramatai, walking down the terraces and seeing like the whole school out and doing the huckers. So that was awesome. Yeah. And then I made Wellington schools, and I had no club. I had no affiliation with any club in town. So I knew I was going to play in town. And Waddy was actually my coach for Wellington secondary schools. And I was like, mate, I need a club. Ring me over some and I'll come to Poneke. And he never rang me. So I must have thought, no, he doesn't want me. So I actually had my auntie and uncle lived in Lowell Bay, and I ended up staying with them for a year. And my uncle at the time, he was a Marist man. So he said, if you come and live with me, you got to go play for Marist. So that's how I ended up at Marist, unfortunately, for a couple of years. I've seen the light and moved over the road.
Tell me about your test jerseys. You've got 69 All Black test jerseys that you've earned. Players often swap the jerseys and present them to their parents. What have you done with some of your test jerseys? Where are some of the special ones? I suppose they're all special, but the really unique ones, 50th test, etc., located.
Yeah, so very special. I gave my first test jersey to my mum and dad, so that's hanging up. My old man in the spare room up the coast. I'll give one to my college, Paraparaumu College. Give one to my club, and then I'll probably haven't gave too many away. One to just a couple of close mates of mine, and but they're just all the jerseys at my parents' house. I don't really keep anything around home. I just try to keep that neutral. I've only got my Hurricanes one when we won it in 2016 hanging up, because that's pretty special. I swapped a few jerseys as well, so very special. Every jersey's kind of got a story and stuff like that, and so I keep them.
And the modern test jersey, you probably go swimming in them nowadays.
Yeah, they're pretty tight. I make sure I get an extra loose one. I don't have a six pack and stuff like that, so they get tighter and tighter every year.
So, Dave, what was out of the World Cup and the Super Rugby Trophy, which one brought you the most gratification?
Mate, they're hard to separate. I think like we're super because we hadn't won it for so long. Like it's a homegrown kind of feeling, if you know what I mean. Like I used to go to the games. I used to go to the All Black games, but it was something that we'd wanted for so long. And obviously the All Blacks, like winning a World Cup is, it's the pinnacle. Like definitely, it's so hard to separate them. I've been asked this question a lot, but they both mean probably the same amount on each other. Just very special moments that probably out of my rugby career, they're the two most special moments I've ever achieved in a jersey.
I was watching a cricket documentary the other day, Dane, and the Australian cricket team were saying how during the rain delay they'd sit around and listen to the 12th man. Do the All Blacks sit around in social situations commentating Beauden Barrett's winning try, a la Justin Marshall style? Is that something that you do?
Definitely wouldn't be Marshy's commentary, that's for sure. I'd rather listen to the 12th man as well.
In terms of the All Blacks, you have this image which is very respectable and honourable and proud. Do you guys have fun anymore?
Oh, no, we do, just behind closed doors. And no social media. No, we do, mate. Like the big part of being an All Black is especially when Steve was in there, was about having fun. Like every Tuesday we'd have a club rooms and we were all wear our club jerseys and have a raffle and a bit of a laugh and stuff like that. So you got some interesting characters in the All Blacks who provide a lot of good value and good humour. So we do have a bit of fun.
And who are those characters? Because we see the guys on TV and they look tall, proud, earnest.
Yeah.
And yet you see them in a completely different light. Obviously, there are some things that stay on tour. I accept that, Dane. But who are the guys that make you laugh? Who's the guy that plays the guitar and distributes the nickname, that kind of thing?
Yeah, there's a couple. Guzzler, Joe Metallic, he's a bit of a he's pretty funny. Joe Moody, he's one of the greats. He's a bit of a redneck from down in Christchurch, so he's real good value. He doesn't hold back on anyone, so he's good. And another Angus Tarvau, who's kind of, I suppose, the class clown. He gets the boys up, and he's great, mate. He'll get up and dance and sing in front of anyone, so he's got no shame.
So when you're in the All Blacks, you're in such a identifiable and privileged position. What's the strangest or kindest thing that's happened to you as an All Black off the field?
Oh, well. I met this. I had this fans at Canes game. They keep turning up to my games and giving me chocolate, which I've actually good mates with them now, Alex and Claire. And I said, you got to stop with the chocolate. Like, I really appreciate it, but just stop bringing it. So I gave him like a training jersey, and then I ended up going to his wedding he invited me to his wedding. So I felt pretty humbled and special. I went. Ended up being at the Wellington Zoo. They were big fans of the Lion, so that was kind of I still keep in touch with them now, so they're good people. So that was pretty kind, getting invited to a wedding after receiving chocolate after games.
Have you met the man in the MasterCard commercial?
No. What, the old... no, I can't say I have.
So, Dave, what's your favourite try in rugby? Adam and I were talking about this before we came on air. That test match at Eden Park against Australia, that must be up there as one of your favourite tries of all time.
Yeah, no, that was good. Any try against Aussies was always pretty special. I think my one, because I love my league, and I scored one at Suncorp. I've always I remember even for Canes, I'd love to score a try at Suncorp, and I managed to score one for the All Blacks against Aussie, and sneaky down the sideline. So that's probably one of my favourites. But they're hard to separate, mate. But Eden Park, I think that was Rico's. All those guys leaving last games, and
that's right.
We lost the first game, and so it was extra special, I suppose, setting out those lads the way they deserve.
With your injury, Dane, you've had a lot of time to reflect on your life off the field. What is it that you want to do post rugby, and has that changed in the time that you've been in rugby?
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure what I'm actually going to do after rugby, but I'm definitely moving home to Kapiti and just going to retire up there and get out of the limelight and just be normal for the rest of my life, I think. Definitely give back to rugby though. I'm definitely keen to help out just like a Colts team, or not coach professionally. There's no way I'll be into that, but help out like a first 15 or the Colts side out there, and just watch my kids grow up, mate. I hope they take up sport and stuff like that, and just gonna live a simple life, mate, out there, and just become just a Joe Average and get on with life.
That's interesting you say that, because a lot of guys remain very high profile. What's the most difficult thing about having such a high profile? I mean, what's it like before a test match, especially a week in that the All Blacks have lost, and you're sitting there in the hotel on Friday night going, oh my God, we have to win tomorrow, the country's going to crucify us.
No, we don't really think like that's just been, I suppose that's the expectation of being an All Black and a professional rugby player in New Zealand. You're expected to win. I think it's definitely a lot different climate now since the social media things kind of come along. I think that it's like everyone's got Instagram and Facebook, and so you can get instant feedback from certain people, sometimes good, sometimes bad, and they don't hold back. Like stuff like that, it's kind of people just get into you, like they don't hold back anymore, and everyone's got their opinion. So that's something I definitely won't miss. But I won't be doing it to anyone else.
What's the worst feedback you've had? Because people in a high-profile position are subject to things that Joe Average don't understand.
Yeah, I don't know if I can repeat them all. Let's put it this way: when I got singling against Aussie for the non-intentional judo throw, I had some real hate mail from some Aussie fans straight inbox to my Instagram. Beep, and people get pretty personal. It's nothing you can't take, but that's just what it is. People get into them, stuck into you.
So Dane, in course of mid-June, Super Rugby's returning, Super Rugby Aotearoa as it's called. The Hurricanes are well known for running out onto Westpac Stadium with the crowd and the loud music. Where's the adrenaline going to come from an empty stadium?
Definitely. It's going to be weird. I remember watching some of the league before they went into lockdown. Mate, I think, but with what's happened too, like we're very grateful we even get the chance to get out and play rugby again. And it's obviously going to be different, mate, but we've got to, I suppose, represent ourselves and represent our fans, and the best way we can do that is by performing. And it's going to be empty, but hopefully we can put a smile on people's faces and with the joy of sport back and represent the best way that we can by playing well. And that's for our brand, for our Hurricane symbol and for our fans. So it's going to be different, but it's just we're going to have to just play for them in a different way.
Well, Dane, it's been fantastic having you on the Huddy Hui tonight. A lot of people have been telling us how excited they have been having you on as our guest, including my nephew of 9 years old. He plays hooker and he's your favourite player, but unfortunately he plays for Huddy Boys Marist. So,
the Eagles.
Yeah.
Wow. All good, mate.
Yeah. All good. But thank you very much for coming on. All the best for Super Rugby, and hopefully we'll see the All Blacks on the field later in the year.
Cheers, lads. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Dane.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Adam, that was a fantastic interview. Not every day that we get a Karen All Black on a podcast such as the Huddy Hui. It's only 5 episodes in. We got some fantastic responses there and insights into a professional rugby player at the highest level.
Well, according to that poster, he lives with you. What a great man Dane Coles is. Really totally changed the blueprint for a hooker in rugby. Prior to Dane Coles, it was very unusual to see a hooker roaming on the wing, running, offloading, drawing in defenders like he is capable of doing. And he's really been a catalyst in not only changing the way in which the role of hooker has evolved, such an exciting position now, contrasted with 2-3 decades ago, but he's also been instrumental in much of the success that the All Blacks and the Hurricanes have enjoyed. And I was interested in that he identified the Hurricane Super Rugby triumph as almost more enjoyable than the World Cup success. And that suggests to me he's a man grounded in his roots. And I remember when he played that Poneke game last year that you referenced, it was a very dramatic day at the Poneke Rec. Dane played the first half, was almost invisible for half an hour, and then like a supernova, he exploded into the game, scored a try, created another try, and Poneke was well ahead at half-time, Poneke having to win to remain in contention for the Jubilee Cup. Coles was substituted at half-time in stipulation with his contract arrangements, and in the second half, Poneke played very well, won the game, but I suspect that wouldn't have happened had Dane Coles remained on the field. But anyhow, Coles, who had fulfilled his obligation, didn't depart Poneke. He stayed and supported his team for the remainder of the match. He was immaculately presented in his Poneke uniform, and he spent a lot of time in the Poneke clubhouse, greeting fans of both teams, signing pictures, taking autographs, and he couldn't have been a better representative for the Poneke Rugby Club and for Dane Coles, the human being. Forget this talk about the brand. Dane Coles struck me as a very genuine man, even outside the whole brand deal.
Exactly right, Adam. We often forget that a lot of our professional rugby players are actually very much human and great to be around, and aren't always these high-level society people. They're very much down to earth. It's really interesting. You talked about how he hung around at club rugby, because there was another podcast this week on the spin-off where TJ Perenara suggested that, All Blacks should be playing more club rugby.
Well, it would certainly rejuvenate rugby at the grassroots level, which prior to coronavirus was really struggling, but now is in a very perilous state. At least 9 of Wellington's 17 rugby clubs are in serious financial distress. They haven't revealed precisely what that means, but the reality is that with no games, no subs, no bar takings, no players, things are very difficult. So it would be wonderful to see the All Blacks play more club rugby. However, club rugby is so far behind professional rugby now in terms of fitness and the way it's played that it's difficult to imagine All Blacks surviving so long in club rugby. And it saddens me to say that, but I suspect that All Blacks in their physical condition would really dominate club rugby, and perhaps there is a counter argument, not that I necessarily accept it, that having All Blacks in club rugby might be a disservice because they might expose some of the frailties that exist within club rugby. But we just want club rugby back on the field. We're desperate for it. It was disappointing that the government retracted on their level 2 guidelines. It was outdoor gatherings of 100. Now it's outdoor gatherings of 10. The sooner we get to Soames Island, the better.
I agree. The sooner we get to Soames Island, the better. That John Cross is in that ferry, revving it up, getting ready to go. By the looks of it, probably be about mid-June when club rugby gets back underway, but we're really looking forward to it. Mainly this time of the year, we'll be full-on commentating the wonderful game. We've got a question on the Facebook chat here, Adam, and it'll be interesting your thoughts on it, myself being a referee. It's a rather interesting question. The last 24 hours, World Rugby agreed to change the law preventing tries against the goalposts. What's your thoughts on that?
I think that's a negative move. I think the rules should be written in a way which encourages positive attacking play. The idea of rugby is to score more points than the opposition. The most prolific method of scoring is a try. So anything that favours the attempt or the ambition to score a try should result in profit. I think that the rule concerning benefit of the doubt should be changed to favour the attacking team rather than the defending team, because what you're saying to the attacking team is well done for getting in a position close to scoring a try. What you're saying, if you reward the negative defending team for keeping the opposition at bay, is you're not rewarding that encouraging motive. Personally, if I had charge of rugby, I'd have a very serious conversation about reducing the value of the penalty and the drop goal as well. Rugby is a game about using space, using all 15 players and scoring tries. And okay, there are games that we enjoy sometimes in difficult conditions. There are games that we enjoy between two colossal defensive teams. But by and large, people want to turn up and watch rugby and be entertained. And the way they're entertained is not by watching a Johnny Wilkinson style player, it's by watching a Daniel Carter style player.
Oh, exactly right. I think I don't like the law change. However, apparently World Rugby's idea behind it was safety, because the goalpost pad might move and might hurt themselves on the pole. But you've seen the size of rugby post pads this day at age 8, and they're thick as anything.
Well, so are the players. So they shouldn't be using the post to score a try, perhaps.
Drake Travella's commented here, God help us if Adam Julius in charge of World Rugby.
Well, that's Jack Travella's opinion. He's a very passionate and engaged and special young man.
Interesting, we talk about safety and rule changes. Ian Kirkpatrick, the All Black great Adam, came out during the week and was quite worried about rugby in general in terms of playing. Could you explain more on that?
Well, Ian Kirkpatrick was a legendary All Black flanker, 38 tests between 1967 and 1977. If you ever want to see great rugby, watch Ian Kirkpatrick's try in the second test against the British Lions in 1971. He runs almost the entire length of the field, falling most of the Lions on his way for the three-pointer it was back then, 1972. The first 4-point try by an All Black was scored by John Dugan, old boy of St Bernard's College where you teach. That's my piece of trivia for
That's right, John Dugan.
Tonight.
The St Bernard's only All Black. Yep,
St Bernard's only All Black. Well, they had very fine rugby league international by the name of Ben Matalino, but that's an aside.
Yes, that's right.
Ian Kirkpatrick was referencing the huge size of these warriors. Rugby really was always a gladiatorial game, but when you've got these behemoth 120 kilo men crashing into each other, it really resembles something of a physical contest that we've never seen before at any time in human history. There was no way that the Roman gladiators were that big. But here's a insight into the sheer size of rugby players. We were talking off air about the open side flanker position and how good some of these open side flankers in New Zealand are. Du Plessis, Karifi, Hurricane, intense, dynamic, capable, wouldn't let you down in an All Black test match, but he may never get picked for the All Blacks simply because he's a few inches too short and a few kilos too light. And I say that not disingenuously, because Du Plessis Karifi is over 6 feet tall and he's 101 kilos. That's a big guy. But Peter Steph du Toit, the World Rugby Player of the Year, plays in the same position, 120 kilos and 2 meters tall. And the collision involving those size of athletes, and those size of athletes by their very nature, just frighten people away from the game. And Ian Kirkpatrick was a big guy for his time, but if he's coming out and saying remarks of that ilk, then it does justify the presence of weight-restricted contests. It does justify the presence of greater safety regulations. Ian Kirkpatrick has been involved in the game longer than just about anybody in this country, and what he says has a lot of merit. And I think what he's alluding to is the need to keep people in the game despite the huge size of these professionals.
Oh, exactly right. And those are things that no doubt a lot of provincial unions and secondary schools around New Zealand in the current situation that we are in, and also with player numbers, ideas particularly on rate restriction rugby, we could see the return of a lot more of those grades. Adam, very interesting New Zealand sporting history today. 25 years ago, a certain boat called Black Magic took on the might of Dennis Connor at San Diego, I believe it was. And they bet Dennis Conner and brought home the America's Cup. Of course, such famous names as Sir Peter Blake, Russell Coots, and Brad Butterworth will go down as legends as being the men that brought home the old mug. And of course, who can forget that famous line, the America's Cup is now New Zealand's Cup, said by the great Peter Montgomery.
Well, prior to 1995, I knew absolutely nothing about yachting. I didn't grow up in Eastbourne or the wealthy, leafy suburbs of lake areas. And all of a sudden, New Zealand was going crazy over this thing called the America's Cup. And New Zealand defied the odds with their ingenuity and prowess aboard the boat itself to win the America's Cup against dirty Dennis Conner, who was a really polarizing guy, brash, outspoken American. In fact, he walked off the set of Paul Holmes' very first program in a vicious argument with the broadcaster in 1989. And it was impossible not to be swept up in the mania of the America's Cup, Red Sox, the merchandising, the excitement of a little old nation in New Zealand beating this big American corporate powerhouse. And then New Zealand went on to defend the America's Cup, which was a wonderful time for Auckland in particular. Huge money in the economy because of the interest that created on the waterfront. In fact, the Viaduct Basin and its appearance is largely in honour of the America's Cup and what that achieved for New Zealand. Fantastic part of Auckland, the Viaduct Basin. Not such a fan of Auckland, but I really enjoy that part of town. But the most enduring memory of the America's Cup for me as a broadcaster, would be one at that, is Peter Montgomery. He had a huge voice, innate charisma, genuine excitement, and he created language that we'd never heard of before. Tack, jive, all this new expression. It was similarly eerie in terms of the new lexicon to the coronavirus situation, although the phrases in rowing obviously had, or yachting rather, had a far more positive connotation. A fantastic time to be a New Zealander when they won the America's Cup. And of course, the America's Cup took a hit when it was lost. And there was questions about why the government was funding it and why the boat wasn't winning. And they got it back. And it's only good for New Zealand to have that trophy in our backyard.
Yes, and hopefully next year, fingers crossed, that the America's Cup is held off the coast of Auckland.
Might be off the coast of Soames Island.
Well, it could be off Soames Island because we seem to be COVID-free down here, so that's a very good. Nearly 4 weeks we haven't had a case.
My favourite John Cross racing the America's Cup boat.
Oh, that would be fantastic, wouldn't it? East by West Ferry and the America's Cup with John Cross at the helm. There we go. My favourite, one of my other memories, of course, this is good trans-Tasman banter, Adam. They always called it one duck and you're out of the cup, and that was the Australian boat that snapped in half and sunk against Team New Zealand in 95.
Well, that was unbelievable. The boat snapped like a banana and plummeted to the bottom of the San Diego Bay. My favourite story about Australia and the America's Cup was when they won the America's Cup off the New York Yachting Club in Fremantle Harbour in 1983. Alan Bond was a big part of the ownership of the Australian boat, and they were down in this series against the American opposition, having lost the previous race, and they were at the bar drinking furiously, theorising about how they might overcome the mighty Americans. And in the most Australian of ways, they agreed to put the keel on the bottom of the boat upside down. I'll put it upside down. We'll try something different. It might work, mate. And sure enough, with an upside down keel, or a dyslexic piece of ingenuity, the Australian boat, captained by John Bertram, powered home to win the America's Cup. It's a very amusing story and a great triumph for Australian sport.
And of course, Bob Hawke celebrated wearing that very unique Australian flag jacket that he had on at the time. Well, Adam, it's been a fantastic episode of the Huddy Hui. Great to have you on as always. And next week we could be in a different location. You never know. Have to be a restaurant because the bars aren't allowed to be bars at the moment.
It might be Soames Island.
Well, it could be Soames Island. We could be in the quarantine station filming from there. So thank you as always, Adam. And we will see you next Wednesday.
Ka pai.
Ka pai. And thank you all for joining the Huddy Hui tonight. And our guest, Dane Coles, thank you very much for coming on the show. We will see you next Wednesday at 8 o'clock with our next special guest. Ciao for now.